Hello, it's the Women's Eye Podcast. I'm your host, Alenka Vrecek. Thank you for joining me here, where you will meet passionate women who are creating change. Today, we have a very special guest who will take us on a truly wild ride, so hold on to your seats. Please help me welcome today's guest, Susan Norman. Do you like to go by Sue or Susan?
Almost everyone calls me Sue.
That's what I thought.
It just
Uh,
didn't seem quite professional enough for the book cover, but yeah, it's Sue.
Stu won a national world champion titles as a member of U.S. slalom kayak team and the U.S. women's whitewater rafting team. You've worn many hats, Sue. For 27 years, you were a hydrologist with the U.S. Forest Service here in Lake Tahoe. And last and definitely not least, you became a mother at a very young age of 57 when you adopted your nephew, Seth, who at that time was 4 years old, which is an amazing thing to what you are doing. But first, this is brought to you by Costco Financial Group in Phoenix. Costco president Catherine Scrivano started her business to help people like you create the financial strength to achieve your dreams. And we all need some money to protect our
Mhm.
dreams and what we want to do in life. You have been very busy this summer, Sue, since your book Risk. Show us your book because I think the
Okay.
cover is absolutely beautiful. Who did the graphics for you?
Well, my publisher, She Writes Press, has people on staff that are really talented, and they gave me three proofs, and this was one of them. I said, "That's it."
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. When you see it's right, it's right.
Yeah.
That's just one of the things that you and I have in common because my book was also published by She Writes Press.
Mhm.
And your book is on fire. You have won many awards and you have been definitely busy with sharing your story, which we're going to go a little bit deeper on in our conversation. Um, you have had to start at the beginning, which is usually where we like to start. You've had a pretty rough childhood. Tell us a little bit more to what are some of the things that you want to share with us that really shaped your life from early on? Uh,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. When I think about my childhood, it was definitely, you know, um, extreme highs and lows, I'd have to say. So the what disrupted my childhood early on was my mom contracted multiple sclerosis when I was 5, and she turned out to have an especially, virulent form of that condition. A lot of people can maintain their mobility much longer than my mother experienced, but she had what they called acute multiple sclerosis and was bedridden by the time I was 10 and, uh, essentially completely paralyzed. And so that threw my family into emotional, financial chaos. My dad all of a sudden, became a single parent I have a twin brother and couldn't maintain a steady work situation. He was a comedy writer and cartoonist, and it
mm,
was hard to do that work with this kind of family tragedy that we were experiencing. But he sought solace and grounding and strength from his connection to the outdoors and rivers, and included, of course, my brother and I in that, experiences to that he needed to hold himself together, and that became my, um, foundation for grounding as well. So at the same time I was experiencing a lot of insecurity and sadness and instability because of the situation with my mother's illness, I was also, um, introduced and developing this relationship with the outdoors and the river and paddling culture, that became a strong foundation to this day.
But your mother certainly gave you an incredible gift. What you write in your book is that she really believed in you and she
Mhm.
encouraged you to be yourself, and she was very proud of your achievements.
Yes, and that yes, I do spend because I realized after, of course, sharing stories with all your friends about your life and your relationships, and I remember early on feeling like, why do people have such difficult relationships with their mothers? You know,
Mm,
when my mother was always my biggest fan, and but then I of course came to recognize, if she had never gotten multiple sclerosis, maybe we would have had the same kind of struggles that other women have with their moms. But
yeah,
because of the situation she was in, and she was a very intelligent woman, she was very passionate, and she was an early believer in environmental advocacy and women's rights. And she made it, she just was provided as much parenting and guidance as she could from her hospital bed.
that's
And, you
amazing.
know
And of course, your father, who took you on this wild and crazy adventures, gave you really the foundation for your river rafting, river kayaking, and just the love of nature in general, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And you and I grew up in very different parts of the world, uh,
Mhm.
but we also, in many ways, have a lot of similarities in our upbringing, with being exposed to nature and,
Mhm.
our my dad dragged us up the
Mhm.
mountains, sometimes screaming and kicking, and,
Yeah.
but those are now my favorite memories. You and I also have in common that we were both slalom racers, except in different in
Yeah.
different surfaces. Tell us a little bit because I think a lot of our listeners don't know what whitewater kayaking and slalom racing in particular looks like. And just a
Yeah.
quick little description because it's such a fringe sport.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Although more so in this country than in Europe, and particularly in the part of the world where you're from, actually, there's many, many, many world champions that have come from
I
Czechoslovakia, Slovenia.
tiny little country of Slovenia, which I was
Yes, has
exposed to
some.
some of it, but I'll tell you, big water, river definitely scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, but whoever invented whitewater slalom obviously did it pattern after ski slalom. So it's the same idea of like taking a section, uh, ski slope, you make it more difficult by putting gates on it. Same thing on a river. You take a section of river, put gates on it that force you to make these difficult moves, if more difficult than if you were just going down the slope. And the one difference is that whitewater slalom, you get penalties for touching the gates. So you have to run the course cleanly, to not hit gates. And it is, but now that it's been in the Olympics now for a number of years, more and more people are seeing it. And if anyone wants to see it, to really get a visual of what it's like, just Google Jessica Fox
Hmm,
uh, in the 2024 Olympics. She was the first person to medal twice in the Olympics in the sport because they added whitewater canoe slalom for women as well as kayak slalom, and she won 2 gold medals last year.
that's you definitely paved the road. You were at the very beginning of US women's kayaking as well as water rafting, river rafting
Right.
period in this country. And in the world for that matter. It
Mhm.
was definitely as it is so often in sports, it was a male-dominated sport, and,
Mhm.
uh, you know, you and I are kind of similar size, which we're not
Mhm.
very big women, but, they
Mhm.
always say, little rivers definitely are strong, and I
Yeah.
you have that incredible inner strength and, passion for what you do. Um, and, just you've been all over the world with, s I don't know, do you have a particularly favorite river that you ever ran, maybe?
Well, yeah, and I've actually my favorite river is the Tuolumne River here in California. And, it's hard to say favorite river because every river has its unique, you know, characteristics and things you love about it. But the Tuolumne, just because it's such a beautiful section of river and so accessible, and it has kind of the right amount of challenge along with beautiful sandy camping beaches. You can do it in a 3-day weekend. I haven't been on the Tuolumne in many years, but I always felt like that was kind of my favorite river. But there's so many. The United States is blessed, with many beautiful rivers.
Well, we have a lot of incredible waterways in general. I mean, even just all the lakes, that we have around here, and,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, it's, we live in a beautiful place, there's no
Yeah.
doubt, and, we're very lucky also to live here in Tahoe. You're still involved very much in, all the water-related sports that we have here, on the lake. So once you've gone through high school, you have a twin brother, and
Mhm.
it seems in the book, in reading your amazing book, which I really strongly recommend our listeners to pick it up, and you're going to learn not just about the kayaking and rafting, but so many other things. There's so many different themes that run through your book. Um, but your path with your twin brother diverged,
Mhm.
after high school. Tell us what you did when you finished high school. And
Yeah. So I had a little different launch from high school into the world than many people that come from Tahoe or other um, where I say parents are more well off. So my dad wasn't able to provide us a path to college financially, and he recommended we join the military in order to get the GI Bill because he wasn't going to be able to provide any financial support. And that's what he did when he was a young person, although he was drafted. But he knew that that was going to be a path for us to do. And I had become very involved in kayak racing the last year I was in high school. And that summer, I was really getting very uh, uh, passionate about that. But decided to take his advice and went into the military 3 days after my 18th birthday, after spending the whole summer at kayak slalom racing camps. And it was the best choice to this day I feel that I ever made. It was the stepping stone to college and then my career. That was really a good path. And my brother had enlisted at the same time, but where I had grasped on to the cult of whitewater slalom, he got recruited by a religious cult that same summer. And when I look back on it and as I write about it, we were both looking for a community to belong to because we were both adrift, in the at that point. And so it's understandable, what happened. Unfortunately, his path in with the religious cult didn't end as well as mine. But it also resulted in him deciding to decline he got out of his enlistment contract and his life went a completely different direction. But for me, I was able to keep kayaking when I was in the army, which I didn't know what was going to happen once you get on the bus and head to boot camp. You have no idea what's going to happen, where you're going to go. but I ended up getting assigned to a duty station in Germany, which is the birthplace of whitewater kayaking and slalom racing. And I continued to paddle there. I actually even got a job while I was in the Army teaching kayaking at the Armed Forces Recreation Center in Garmisch. I did that for 2 summers, teaching kayaking to military people and their dependents.
That's a pretty amazing path that, it's amazing when we're at that age, just one step in a certain direction completely changes our life. And at that point, would you give yourself, like, if you could go back in time,
Mhm.
um, would you give younger self, an advice that you would change anything? Or, I mean, not that we can never do that, but, I'm more saying it from the point of view to advice to younger women,
Mhm.
especially in that sport.
Mhm.
Where can they go now? How can they take the path? And we got lots of options out there, a lot more than what you had. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to younger women today?
So the way I present it is like, this is for you guys to have fun and play on the river and work hard because you guys are just geared to work hard. I could see that. But to play on the river in a team because even in a sport like even soccer, which is a team sport, it's still not the same as paddling in a raft together on difficult whitewater. The kind of teamwork you have to engage in when you're in a boat together to safely get yourself through a rapid is different than many other sports. I mean, it would be
Because
akin to
your
rock
life
climbing
depends on
being
it. Yeah.
yes. So you
Yes.
have this different kind of interaction which can get very emotional, and,
Yeah.
people can get scared, they can get upset, they can get frustrated with each other.
There's a
So
lot of dynamics that go into
yeah,
too. Yes, and
but the 2 things that really, like I said, it was like, have fun, we're gonna work hard, but we're not gonna get this isn't about when I first accompanied them to a world championships in Bosnia Herzegovina in it was 2022, is that right?
dur
Um,
during COVID?
no, it was after COVID. It
Just right after
was right
COVID.
after COVID, because there hadn't been a world championships for several years, so
Right.
it was kind of a big deal, and it was also right after Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah,
So was
and
that 2022? I think so.
hard to believe that it's been that long already.
I know. So,
Uh,
anyway, it was a big deal for them to go, and I said, "The point of going to this event is not to win, it's to, um, engage in this international rafting community, because you're gonna meet people from all different countries, you know, and you are part of a small group of people that do this unique thing, and so these women that you are competing against are your sisters."
it's a sense of belonging, and you
Yeah,
really do through those sports, through any sport, but I do and agree that specifically through those kind of sports, you create relationships that are for life.
yeah.
And, it's that just the experience, the international experience and
Mhm,
connecting with athletes from around the world,
mhm,
so important, especially so much more today in the kind of
mhm,
world we live in. If we
mhm,
connect, and if the sport is one of the ways that we connect, no matter what it
mhm.
is, I think that is worth more than any medals and competition. And
Right.
when I was coaching mountain biking and as well as big mountain skiing, where it's just you want to create passion for just life in general and
Mhm,
friendships and
mhm.
just have something for life that
Yeah.
going to nurture. Um, and It's yeah, it's just amazing. I Do you think competition is necessary for a development of, it seems like everything's such a competition now with the kids and they're under so much pressure.
No, I think for a lot of kids, it's not a healthy thing to do. I would say that for my son. I
Mhm.
do not encourage him to do, uh, competitive sports because I don't think he has the temperament, uh, to experience that positively.
Yeah.
And
It
I
can backfire in many ways. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more since we're pivoting into the life of Seth and your life
Mhm.
with Seth. Um, you were already at the stage of your life where things were kind of calming down. You were ready to
Mhm.
retire, and then your life really changed, took a big turn.
Yes, so I had very, carefully and methodically cultivated a child-free life that was very adventurous, and I was very, happy in my career, um, working for the Forest Service and doing regional level projects as well as projects in the Tahoe Basin. I was involved in an outrigger canoe club. I had a wide group of, also childless friends that I did lots of adventurous things with, and then my twin brother called me up when I was at a fun little friend's training camp in Hawaii paddling outrigger canoes and told me he, was gonna be a father. And, it was definitely a shock, because of at that point, my brother or for a while, my brother had not been succeeding in life. I brought them out here and then very quickly realized that there was no way my brother could be a functional parent, and I was gonna have to become the parent, and I applied and secured legal guardianship by the time Seth was 5.
Well, you certainly have changed this boy's life, and it does become a vicious cycle when people
Mhm,
cannot, and if they are not any kind of safety nets built
mhm,
around there. Uh,
mhm,
you also had a person in your life that was kind of pivotal, especially in your kayaking career. It's pretty amazing when we have that teacher, mentor person that embraces you and gives you a helping hand. And I think, you know, in that I find was really the biggest message in your book because Risk, which is such an amazing, strong title, it tells us so much about
mhm,
the river and how the river had saved you in a sense. Um, but through that resilience that you got on the river, you are now able to really change someone's life that would have had a very different path. In that, and I think, in that sense, uh, what when you set on to write a book, what was your major goal, to what was the major message that you wanted to leave us with, in writing?
yeah. Well, when I first started writing the book, I didn't have a major message goal. I just thought I was gonna write a very, um I wanted to write, about the sport of whitewater paddling because I had been involved in it in so many different levels from the very beginning, and I recognized that, that there's very few people that have, well, there's nobody that's competed in whitewater kayaking and also whitewater rafting as a woman. There are a couple men that have done that.
Mhm.
Um, but I also taught kayaking. I've coached both slalom kayaking and rafting. I've worked as a hydrologist restoring rivers in my career. So it's just I just thought I was going to write a very kind of like this is a sport that I have loved and has been. such a big part of my life that I want people to see from my point of view. And so those are the stories I started writing in this writing group in Truckee that I joined up with as I moved in with my spouse for a while so my son could go through elementary school in Truckee, and I joined this group through Tangled Roots Writing
With Karen,
with a
yeah.
yeah, with a group of other women, and there was a an amazing experience because I was so vulnerable at that time because of the new being a new parent and really struggling with that role and trying to understand how to deal with the emotional fallout that Seth was dealing with because of his early childhood experience, and then learning to recognize that I still had emotional baggage I was carrying from my upbringing that I didn't realize I still had that were affecting my ability to parent. But with this writing group, I was writing 2 things happened. One, I started writing all these really exciting, dramatic whitewater stories, in this group, and people read them and they said, these are really great stories, um, great experiences, but they read a little bit like a water or a lot like a water quality monitoring report. 'Cause I didn't know how to do creative writing. Then all I knew was how to do technical writing because that's what I did in the Forest Service for 3 decades. So, in a writing group like that, what's great and I don't know if college is like this, but in this writing group, the women that were critiquing my work were so empathetic and intelligent about providing the feedback. I didn't feel criticized, I just felt supported. And
Supported.
yeah, and when you're writing it was super great, to be able to write my exciting whitewater stories in a way that was more engaging to read as they taught me how to write scene and dialogue and reflection and all these other elements of creative writing. But they were the ones that started encouraging me to write about my parenting experience because we were talking about those experiences. I became friends with those women and we started dog walking together and hiking and skiing, and I would be sharing my life's experience that I was experiencing then, and they said, "You need to start writing about that." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't nobody cares about that. I'm not gonna," it's like, "Well, I just think, we just think you should." And so I started doing it. And that's when I, the started seeing what they saw is these connections between the lessons I'd learned and the strengths and skills I'd learned through my relationship with the river for my whole life and how I was applying that and the connection of those experiences to what I was involved in at that time, trying to learn how to become a parent to a child who had some emotion, issues with emotional regulation and ADHD and other very understandable outcomes from his early childhood experience, but, to the people that are trained in that, but I wasn't.
But so, in a sense, River had saved your life, but
Mhm,
I think you were always trying to be very tough and
mhm,
survivor,
mhm.
but it was really that the book, the writing, when you have to be so vulnerable.
Yes.
And
Mhm,
that opens up a lot of things, and I think
mhm.
strong women are it's more difficult for us to be vulnerable out there and to
Yes.
to think like, "No, I'm there to be a role model for everybody else. I cannot
Mhm, mhm.
be this person that has deep emotions and that struggles." I mean, especially,
Right.
like to show people that yes, we are human too, and we struggle with life. And unfortunately, you and I could talk about that, and I'm sure we will. And one of the things that I would like to finish on really is you showed Seth the life on the river.
Mhm.
but it's really, on page 320, I believe, or 230. I'm kind of,
It's 2:30 probably, yeah.
230,
'Cause that's
230.
not the yeah,
When he does his first solo performance
yeah.
in music, man, that's
Mhm,
when I just opened up and tears came to
mhm,
my eyes. And when you see that, love and passion that you discovered basically by chance,
mhm,
um, and it's sports are one thing, but anything that we can give our kids passion, and you're doing that in such an amazing way. And again, unfortunately, we're running out of time.
mhm,
Thank you so much, Sue, for being here. You can learn more about Sue and her story just by going to our website, thewomenseye.com. On the website, you'll also find our books, 20 Women Change Makers. And you can get those wherever you buy books or at changemakerbooks.com. Um, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel. Again, thank you, Sue, so much for being here with us. Until next time, this is the Women's Eye Podcast. I'm Alenka Vrecek. Remember, it is the world as we see it.